In the ancient land of eastern Nigeria, there lived a beautiful woman named Ndidi. Ndidi was known for her kindness and beauty by all the villagers of Nkwele. But tragedy struck when her husband Obinna was found dead under mysterious circumstances. The villagers quickly turned against her, blaming her for his untimely demise. In her despair, Ndidi sought the help of a spirit who promised her vengeance, but at a terrible cost. It was a sunny morning in Nkwele when Ndidi's life took a dark turn. She had just returned from the market. Her basket was filled with ripe plantain and fresh vegetables when she heard the cries and wails of women coming from her home. Confused and alarmed, she rushed inside to find her husband's lifeless body laying on the floor, surrounded by grieving relatives. He stared at the sight before her in shock and confusion.
What happened to my husband?
Ndidi cried, her voice piercing the air like a sharp knife.
Only you could have done this,
Shouted her husband's brother, Chinedu, anger flashing in his eyes.
you were the last one with him.
As the village gathered, the gossip of Ndidi killing her own husband spread like wildfire. Ndidi pleaded for her innocence, but the villagers were deaf to her cries. In their eyes, she was a monster, a widow who had sent her husband to his early grave. Days passed and Ndidi was ostracized. She was constantly accused by everybody and anybody. The anger from the accusations and also the anger from not knowing exactly what happened to her husband led her to wander deep into the forest, seeking solace amongst the ancient trees. It was there that she encountered the spirit of an ancient warrior, Ezeagu, known for his cunning nature and undeniable power. Why do you weep, child of the earth? He asked, his voice like thunder rumbling in the distance.
My husband is dead, and they blame me for it.
She lamented.
I seek vengeance against those who have wronged me.
Ezeagu's eyes gleamed with a dark promise. I can grant you the power to enact your vengeance, but know this. Each life you take will bring you closer to losing your humanity. Ndidi grew excited at the thought of enacting her revenge. Desperation clouded her judgment.
I accept your offer.
She proclaimed, not fully understanding the weight of her words. Very well, Isiagu replied, his voice low and resonant. You will gain the ability to kill anyone you touch, but each act will darken your soul. The choice will always be yours. With a wave of his hand, Ndidi felt a surge of power course through her veins. She looked at her hands, trembling with newfound strength.
I will make them pay,
she whispered, her heart racing with a mix of fear and exhilaration. As Ndidi left the forest, she felt a pull of vengeance guiding her. She returned to the village. Her mind was set on those who had wronged her. Her first target was Chinedu, her husband's brother. Under the cover of the night, she approached him as he slept, her heart pounding. She reached out, her fingers brushed against his skin. In an instant, he gasped, and life slipped away from him like sand through an hourglass. Excitement beamed in her eyes as she saw the powers that she now possessed manifest itself before her. But at the same time, a chill ran down her spine. A shadow flickered at the edge of her mind. You must be careful, Isiagu's voice echoed. One life is only the beginning. The next day, the news spread around Nkwele. Chinedu's death was ruled an accident, but Ndidi felt no remorse. She had tasted vengeance, and it fueled her soul. The power coursing through her gave her a sense of control she had never known. She continued her quest, targeting all those who had accused her, neighbors, friends, anyone who had turned against her. One evening, as Ndidi sat alone in her home, a knock on the door startled her. She got up and went to the door. It was Ike, a childhood friend of hers.
Ndidi, are you well?
Ike asked, noticing the darkness in her eyes and feeling worried for her friend.
I am fine.
Ndidi replied nonchalantly, pushing her away. Each touch became a reminder of her growing power and the cost that it demanded, so she didn't want to make any physical contact with her friend. Ike pressed on, concern written all over her face.
I know something is wrong, Ndidi. You've changed. Let me help you.
Help?
Ndidi laughed bitterly.
You don't even know what I am capable of.
Ike hesitated, sensing the danger.
I just want to understand my friend.
Ndidi grew impatient with annoyance and disgust, and she chased Ike away from her house, shutting the door behind her.
You didn't even come to my aid when I was being accused by the entire village. Now you want to come and help.
The taste of revenge in her kept growing and growing, and she was slowly becoming a shadow of herself, lurking in the darkness of her own making. For the next couple of days, Ndidi began to get haunted dreams of her husband's memory, so she decided she was finally going to seek the truth behind his death. One night, she returned to the forest, hoping to confront the spirit, Eziagu.
I need to know what happened to Obina.
She demanded, her voice echoing through the trees. Eziagu appeared, his form flickering like a flame. You seek knowledge, but you already know the truth,
No,
Ndidi shouted, desperation clawing at her.
I was accused without reason. Tell me the truth.
Eziagu's gaze bore into her. Obina's death was not as it seemed. His heart was heavy with secrets, and those secrets led him to danger.
What do you mean?
Ndidi pressed.
Who killed him?
Eziagu warned. Your thirst for revenge has blinded you. Determined to uncover the truth, Ndidi returned to Nkwale. She began to observe all the people around her, looking for clues. It was then that she noticed a figure that was always lurking in the shadows. Nneka, a childhood friend who had always been jealous of her happiness. Nneka had been the first person to accuse her of murder after her brother-in-law, Chinedu, planting seeds of doubt in the minds of others. Ndidi's heart raced as realization dawned on her.
Nneka,
She called out one evening as she confronted her.
you knew something, didn't you?
Nneka's eyes widened, fear and guilt flooding her features.
I I didn't mean it to go this far.
She stammered.
I I only wanted to protect my family.
Protect them?
Ndidi's voice dripped with anger.
You killed him with your lies.
Killed him?
Nneka stepped back. As Ndidi stepped closer, the dark power within her surged. She reached out to touch Nneka, her fingers trembling with the weight of her decision. But a flicker of doubt stopped her.
What have I become?
She thought to herself. You can still turn back, Eziagu's voice whispered in her ear. But know that every life you take makes it harder to reclaim your soul. Torn between vengeance and her fading humanity, Ndidi hesitated, the shadows closing in on her.
You deserve punishment for what you did.
She whispered.
I didn't do anything.
Nneka cried, tears streaming down her face.
Please, Ndidi, think of my children.
But Ndidi was no longer the woman she once was. With a swift motion, she touched Nneka, the life draining from her in an instant. As Nneka fell to the ground, a hollow emptiness filled Ndidi's heart. Ndidi's soul had fell so deep into the darkness. She now began to see visions of the dead, all the lives she had taken. Chinedu, Nneka, even her late husband, Obina, all of them accusing her, their faces twisted in pain. The laughter that once filled her life was now replaced by a haunting silence. The villagers grew more and more suspicious, realizing a force was at work, that Ndidi was not her normal self. As they gathered to discuss the recent tragedies, they decided to confront Ndidi. She is the one, they declared, uniting against her. We must banish her before she kills all of us. When they came to her, Ndidi felt a surge of anger and despair.
You think you can stop me?
She shouted, the darkness swirling around her.
You are the ones who condemned me.
But inside, she felt the weight of her choices. Each accusation, each act of vengeance drew her closer to losing herself completely. She realized she had become the monster they believed her to be. The determination of the people of Nkwele grew larger and larger, and one day they summoned Ndidi. Ndidi stood before the whole village. She no longer looked like her normal self. She was now a figure cloaked in shadows.
You cannot understand my pain.
She screamed.
You drove me to this.
Ndidi,
A voice called out. It was the village elder, Ugochukwu. His voice steady and calm.
you don't have to do this, Ndidi. We can help you.
Help?
She laughed bitterly.
You only want to see me punished.
No,
Ugochukwu replied, his gaze piercing.
we want to save you from yourself. You've lost your re.
As he spoke, Ndidi felt the darkness within her stare, grappling for control. She could see the faces of the villagers. Fear, anger, and pity.
I don't need your pity.
She shouted, but inside, a part of her longed for redemption.
You can still turn back.
Ugochukwu urged.
It is not Sir Leeds.
In that moment, Ndidi felt a flicker of her old self emerge.
I can't turn back now. It is too late. I killed Chinedu. I killed Nneka. She's the one that killed my husband. And I killed her.
Neka? No, she didn't kill Obina. Obina was deceived by some scammers.
Ugochukwu explained gently. He was drawn into a trap, and those who conspired against him have since fled the village. The realization struck Ndidi like a bolt of lightning. So, it wasn't Nneka. Tears streamed down her face as the weight of her actions crashed down on her. The darkness within her surged in response to her realization, threatening to consume her entirely. Eziagu's voice echoed in her mind. Each life you take brings you closer to losing your humanity. What have I done? She whispered, her heart breaking. She looked at the villagers, their faces now filled with compassion rather than fear. You can be free, Ndidi, Ugochukwu said softly, but you must let go of your vengeance. I want to, she cried, but the dark power surged within her, pulling her back. I can't. I have already tried. I have taken so many lives. In that moment, Ndidi faced the hardest choice of all. She could feel Eziagu's presence tightening around her, urging her to embrace the darkness, but she also felt the warmth of the villagers' hope, a flicker of light in the overwhelming shadows. I refuse to be your puppet, Eziago, she declared, her voice stronger than before. I choose to reclaim my humanity. With that declaration, she reached deep within herself, fighting against the darkness. The energy crackled around her as she felt her power within begin to unravel. I renounce the deal, she shouted, a fierce determination coursing through her veins. But Eziago laughed, a chilling sound that echoed in the wind. You think you can escape the pact that we made? You are too late. You are bound to me now. As Ndidi stood before the villagers, the darkness began to swirl around her, threatening to pull her into its depths. Help me, she cried, desperation in her voice. I can't fight it alone. Ugochukwu stepped forward, his eyes filled with sorrow and understanding. I will help you, Ndidi. You are not alone. But as the villagers all stood and reached for her, Ndidi felt a violent pull. The darkness was too powerful. It tore at her very essence. In one last act of defiance, she hurled herself away with all the strength she had, determined to break the chains that bound her. And with a final cry of desperation, Ndidi summoned the last remnants of her humanity. I choose light over darkness, she cried. But it was too late. The energy surged violently, and with a blinding flash, the darkness consumed her. The villagers gasped as they witnessed the transformation. The woman they had once known was gone, vanished, swallowed whole by the very spirit she had sought for vengeance.
The village of Nkwale fell silent. Ndidi had become a whisper in the wind, a ghost haunting the shadows. Though the villagers hoped to save her, her choice had sealed her own fate. As the night passed, they heard her voice, crying in the breeze, a warning of the cost of vengeance. Beware the darkness within, her spirit would whisper, a haunting reminder of the woman who had lost everything in her quest for vengeance. Years later, children would gather around the fire, listening to the elders tell tales of Ndidi. She was once a kind woman, but her heart turned to stone, the elders would say. Let her story be a lesson. Vengeance will consume you, leaving only emptiness behind. And so the tale of Ndidi lived on, passed down from generation to generation, a story of love, loss, and the perils and disadvantages of seeking vengeance without understanding the true cost. The villagers honored her memory, not as a monster, but as a tragic figure who became a guardian of their hearts, reminding them that vengeance can consume even the purest of souls.